In this lesson, we will continue to talk about ENSCAPE materials and how we can create materials and edit materials, and also PBR materials, physically based render, how we can create them, how we can use the textures in ENSCAPE editor or also in a Rhino editor. It's basically almost the same to create our own material with our own effects. So we're also going to talk about mapping in ENSCAPE and mapping in Rhino. And so here I'm just launching ENSCAPE, and I put a couple of planes because I want to put a specific material here. Well, I already put it. And this material is, there you go. So it's a cutout material. Let me synchronize the cameras. So it's a specific material that we can see through. So we're using a specific map that is called opacity map or transparency map or also cutout maps in some cases. So previously we worked in the interior here, setting up some of the materials, and we have some issues. For example, here there is some issues, and this happens when the textures are not synchronized. So I can select this surface here where I apply the material. I can see which layer is on, so I can go and select the material. And so we can fix the issues. Let me see here, layer, wall, and material. Okay, that's the material here. You can create copies when you want to modify only one, but in this case, we want to go and modify this. So I'm going to go into ENSCAPE material editor, and that's the one that I'm looking for. You see the name. So when you are here, you can find the various textures. And down here you have the texture for the generic, which are the albedo and the height map and the reflections, and also if it's a metal or non-metal. So by entering this, if we click here, we can see the texture, and we can see also the folder where this is stored. So it's right here. And we can open another one. We can substitute. We can change the brightness. We can invert the material. We can change the width and the height. So if the material is too big or too small, you can change here. So if I make like 2, I'm gonna double the size. And if I want, I can also rotate. Okay. And here I can change if I'm placing this on the object or if I'm using the word box, etc. Now be careful, because for each material you have more textures. So here you have albedo, which is also called diffuse texture, and then you have displacement. And right now we put here use albedo texture values. Otherwise we can change these and make different values for this, but you probably want to have the various textures synchronized together, otherwise you get strange effects. So here also you can use world box, puts a specific width and height, and you can do the same in here. So world box, and now still we are seeing a strange thing happening here. So it's probably from the roughness, and the roughness it's about the reflection. So where the material is more reflective or less reflective. Where it's white, the roughness is at the top, so it's like 100%. When it's gray, it's going to be like 50%. When it's black, it's going to be like 0%. So when you have black and white textures like the roughness texture, this is how the values are distributed on the texture using the pixels. So here also I can override, or I can use the albedo values. So if I want, I can override and I can put, okay, this is 2, and then word box. And now you can see everything, it looks fine. So be careful on texture using, and you need to synchronize them. And you can synchronize with the albedo, but if it's gonna give you this issue, just put it manually. Now this is really basic mapping. We have also more tools that we can use in Rhino that are more advanced. There we go. You can see wrong mapping, good mapping. So always be careful on the mapping, because it's an important part of applying the materials. All right, so let's go on the outside. Now I put also a brick wall, and I got this material from Polyoven. So I'm going to show you also how you can create your own materials getting stuff from the web. So let's focus on this like pavement, external pavement. Let's work on this. Now, before we create our own material, I want to show you another resource that you can use. And this time is directly in Rhino. So if you go in the render menu in Rhino, if you go down, you have some panels you can use. And here I activated all the panels. So lights, sun, ground plane, rendering, and libraries. In the libraries panel, and it will be open here. So this is the library panel. You can find many others materials that you can use. And also, if you right click here, you can check and uncheck these boxes to open and close different panels. So libraries, and let's say I've used this for the roof, for example. So let's say I go into another library and I want this material. So I can right click and select the object in the scene, right click and assign this directly to the object. I can assign this to the ground plane, or I can import in the material editor. If I import in the material editor, then I can find it when I go back here and, for example, here, use this list and I can find it in here. Now the yellow one is the one that I'm using in the selected object. The blue ones are the ones that are in the scene, and the ones with the exclamation mark, the materials where they have missing textures. So we need to fix them in a way or the other. Also, of course, I can apply once it's there directly from the layer, as we know. Okay, so that's another really useful resource. But let's create our own material now, getting from the web the things we need. And let's also talk about theory. So we're going to use PBR, physically based render materials. Now, PBR materials are made of different textures that overlap, and each one of the textures is going to give a different effect to the material. So albedo, generic appearance, and then you have normal, which defines the 3D effect, and then the roughness. So you can search for PBR materials, or you can search for like each single texture. So albedo, which also is called diffuse, and also normal, which appears to be like bluish, and you can see the 3D effect, which is a fake representation of that. So you can also mix different textures to have really, specific material. And then roughness, again, roughness is going to be black and white, white representing like no glossiness, and black representing the full glossiness, because roughness is the opposite of glossiness. So you can also use glossiness maps on textures. And then we have metalness. Now, in nature, you have metal or non-metal. So by adjusting this value or using a metalness texture, you can use that effect where the material is going to be more metallic or less metallic. So again, these are all effects that represent things that happens in nature. And so they are physically based. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Polyoven. This is the texture that I got from the wall to recreate the wall. And you can see it was taken from a real wall picture here. And you can create your own textures, of course, by extracting from an image using AI. There are different ways you can do it, and you'll find also other video guides in the channel. So if we go into Polyoven, which we already did before, and we got some models before, now we're going to get textures. But before we get into the texture, just quickly, if we go into the models and I open up this model here and we go down to the inspector, you can see that a lot of the details are done with the normal map, a lot of the 3D details. So you don't need to like model and sculpt everything. A lot of effects can be created with the normal map. And also you can use like Substance 3D Painter for this and other like digital sculpting and painting software. So if we go here, we can see that this is not like a repeatable texture. This is called an unwrapped texture. It can only be placed once and on that specific object. It cannot be placed on another object rather than this chair. And it cannot be repeated many, many times because this is not like a tileable, like a scalable texture. It's just going to be that unwrapped on that specific U and V coordinates. Okay, now let's go in the textures. So we need something for the pavement. We can see that on the left side, we have the categories. So we have all, and then terrain, floors, foods, roofing, etc. So I want to do a floor, so I'm going to go into the floor. And here I'm going to look for something that I like to put on my floor in the exterior part of the building. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look for something that I think it's fine for what I have in mind. So, and you can see there are different types like interiors, exteriors, like ones that are more displaced, other that are less displaced, etc., etc. Okay, let's get this one here, floor tiles. And again, we have the different texture, and this will be repeatable, scalable. You can see that the texture, meaning that it's a pattern that can be repeated many, many times. And you can place it on any surface, basically, on any object. Now, on the top right, we choose the resolution, and you don't need really high resolution for this because you're going to repeat this many times. So you can go for 1K, well, you can change later, but bigger the texture, the heavier will be the file. Here we can choose the format. Now, the format could be Blender if you're using Blender, but in this case, we're just going to download it in a zip folder. And when you select the zip folder, it's going to ask you what you want and what you don't want. So, well, I don't want a Blender file. I don't need it. Perhaps I could use a GLTF file, which is 3D, but especially I need the textures. Now, AO is ambient occlusion. I don't need it for the moment. Roughness metal, yes, I need it. Bump, probably not. Diffuse, yes, this is the albedo. Displacement, yes, could be useful. Normal, yes, this is for the 3D effect. Roughness, definitely, because that's for the reflections and reflective, non-reflective part. Specular could be useful. Well, if you think you miss something, just select all the texture and so you don't miss anything. Once you're ready, click on download, and I'm gonna save it in my Polyhaven folder. There we go, floor tiles 04. Save it, wait for it to be downloaded, and let's open it up in the folder. Now we need to extract this in order to access this from ENSCAPE. So right click with your mouse, extract all, extract, and that's the extracted folder. We can delete this one, and this is the one we need. And we have a GLTF 3D object in case of necessity. Otherwise, we just go into the texture, and we can see all the different textures with all the characteristic color. So this is what it takes to make a material. Just a set of textures, or sometimes you just need one, sometimes two. If you have the complete package, it's better. So look for that in other websites also on the web. So these are PBR materials, physically based render. Now, why they're called this? Because they, in reality, the material, they just react to the light. So when the light hits the surface and bounce back focus, you have like specularity or specular or glossiness. When it gets diffused on the surface, you have diffuse or albedo or also roughness. And you can see this is, different images explaining you how this works. So it's all about the lighting, how the object is hit by the light and how it responds in many different ways. So just gonna close this and go inside and make the material now. So you can create your own material in Rhino, as we know. So if I, let me see this, this object here is, let's see, is the pavement external layer. So I can work directly with the layer. So I'm gonna look for it, there we go. So we can do it here. We can do a physically based. And so we have the base color, the roughness, and the opacity. And here we can switch metallic, non-metallic with this little button. But at the moment, we don't have textures. So you can also do a customized. And here you can apply the textures also. And then again, you have glossiness, reflectivity, reflections, etc., etc. Or we can do it in ENSCAPE. And I believe that ENSCAPE works better with ENSCAPE. ENSCAPE materials work better with the ENSCAPE render, of course. So I'm not going to go in the library. I'm just going to go in the editor here. So tune a material that is already there, and this is called PubExt. And well, it's actually not visible here because that's not a material from ENSCAPE. So what I'm gonna do is just apply a material to this. So let's just apply something that I already used before. So it has to be something from ENSCAPE, like this. So this is called Stone 03. Okay. So if I go back now, I can see it here. Okay. And just be careful that this is not applied into some other object out there. So for that event, we can go here and, well, first of all, use layer material so we can see that if it's applied to something else. Otherwise, you can just apply a new one to be sure that you're not modifying anything else. And now we change it. So instead of using this, I'm gonna like delete the texture in here, and I'm gonna put mine. And also down here, you have the transparency cutout, the ones that I was telling you about at the beginning, the one for the wire down there of the fencing, which also requires a texture. But anyway, let's go up here and let's apply the first one, which is going to be the albedo. So click and navigate where you stored the texture. So in my case, in the polyhaven folder and in the floor tiles 04. And look for the albedo. So usually it's pretty visible because it's the only one that is colored as it would be in real life. And there you go. We have the first one. And it looks pretty big. So again, we can do word box. And now it looks better. Then, if you want to make it just a little bit darker, we can play a little bit here with the color because it's kind of pretty bright. So I want this maybe less bright, maybe more reddish. I don't know. I can, as you can see, play around until I find the one that I'm looking for. You can use different types of selectors here, and you can continue until you find the one you like. And also you can go here and change the brightness here, make it less bright. You can again invert, change the size. If it's too small or too big, you can change this, make it bigger or smaller, thanks to the fact that you can repeat this many times. And then you can also rotate it if you want, position this in another way. Okay, since we are doing like a destructivist house, we try to do that. And so we have the albedo, and let's go to the next one. So let's go down, bomb map, normal map, or displacement map. Well, we can use both because we downloaded both, but if you want PBR, you want to go for normal map. So you click here and you get the normal, but you also have the displaced and the bump in case you want it. And also we can increase the intensity of the 3D effect, which is going to be more visible. You need lights to see that. Now you can see this is not synchronized. So go inside and we can use albedo values. So we can synchronize that. And if it doesn't work, we need to do some adjustments later. Now let's go for the last one, which is the roughness. We can use albedo and convert the albedo right away, or we can click on the folder and get the actual roughness from the folder. And again, something is strange here. They are not aligned. They are not using the same mapping. And this is caused because we don't have a mapping on this object. So one way to fix this is to apply the object mapping and then work with the mapping directly in Rhino. That's another really important topic. So let's go. And we have the material. We created the material now. We just need to fix the mapping. So they need to be considered together. So that's the object we want to map. It's a pretty complex object, but in the end is just a box mapping. So go to the properties, And the third panel here is for the mapping. Now, these mapping techniques and tools have been explained in the Rhino video course. So I'm just going to show you a few. For example, the box mapping, which is the one you're going to use the most. The other ones are for cylindrical objects, spherical objects, and then you also have more complex like unwrap, custom mapping, and UV editor, but these are, again, more complex. Just want to go really quick with this. So apply box mapping. And how do we apply it? You can apply it in any view. So maybe I can apply it here. So I'm just going to create a box, and that box will define the size of the texture. So once you're ready, press enter when you create a box, and there you go. Well, it's still pretty big, but it's, better mapped than before. Now to fix this here, we can create another box. We can create it as many times as we want. We can delete the mapping and start all over. So probably here we just need a smaller box. That's all we need. And each texture has its own size in a way. So you need to find out which one is it. And there you go. Now it looks a little better, but we can make it even smaller. Now here you can work with the position. So you can move the texture on the X, on the epsilon, on the Z axis. You can rotate the texture on the various axes. And be careful not to mess too much around. And double click and put 0, double click, put 0, double click, put 0 if you want to bring it back to the beginning. And then we have here size. So we can change the dimension. We can make it more stretched on one dimension or less stretched. We can make it uniform. If we do 1, 1, 1, it's going to be placed uniformly. And then we have, again, offset. So if you want to move the texture, we have repeat. So you can change the repetition, meaning that you're going to affect the scale once again. So scale and repetition, they are strictly related. And then you have rotation again. So in this case, it doesn't do anything, but you can try all these different parameters. So that's one way you can map in Rhino. In other cases, you can use also the planar mapping, which is using a plane instead of a box. And that's what happens also in ENSCAPE. So if you manage to fix everything in here, that's fine. If you don't, you can just fix it with the Rhino mapping. So you need to do that. You need to know how to do it. And that's it. So this is now our customized material. I think I want this a little more like sand effect. So we can, go back, adjust it as many times as we want. Now to do the transparency, if we scroll down, we also have this transparency. There are two types: transmittance, like for translucent, and then cutout, which basically gonna cut something that is black out and gonna leave the white parts. So if I go here in this object, and here I've applied a specific material, which is the fencing material, and is this one here, and you can see it has this texture that I also changed, and it has albedo, normal, and cutout. So cutout, the white parts remains, the black goes away. That's all. So you can apply any black and white image to create your own cutout mapping, or you can use the ones that are already in the editor as I did. So in this case, I went for the metals, and here you have like solid metals, and then here you have perforated metals, embossed, and corrugated metals, etc., etc. This is perforated steel, and fencing, it's so embossed. Okay, if you don't find, there you go, fence, grid. So let's use this for example. So import selection, and now if I go in the editor, you can see this new one has this different type of transparency. Okay, so I can just now change it by applying the material directly here, or you can create your customized cutout map or transparency map, and that's the other one. Now you can see it looks pretty stretched. So again, you go here and you fix it, either by using the parameters here or by using the material mapping in Rhino. If you want to find more, just type here Cutout, texture, or opacity, texture, or transparency. And you will see how many effects you can get with this. So this will be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe to the channel to stay updated. If you want to support us, please join the channel as a supporter. Check our other video courses and video guides, and see you in the next video.